All right, that's 2 minutes past, and I'm sure some people will keep coming in, but I'll just go ahead and kick us off. So, good morning, everyone, or good evening, wherever you are in the world, and happy Wednesday. A very big warm welcome to you. My name is Natasha. I work for City and Guilds Foundation, which is all about removing barriers for individuals and helping them find secure and sustained employment. We are extremely delighted that you could join us today and also to be hosting this webinar with Kineo that are part of the City and Guilds business and offer bespoke training courses. They most recently launched their ESG training suite of courses, which we'll be talking about later in this webinar. So stay tuned to find out more. We have an extremely exciting panel of industry experts lined up for the next hour, and they'll be sharing a little bit about best practice on building an ESG-centric culture to transform your business, and I'll let them introduce themselves in a little bit. But just to say, we'll be taking your questions at the end, so please feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll get to them in the end. As well, also feel free to say hello and let us know where you're from. But I'm just going to go ahead and hand over to our pilot for the day, Fraser, to get us going, and I will see you all at the end. Over to you, Fraser.
Thank you, Natasha. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Fraser Harper, and I am the co-author and producer of an online newsletter and podcast called The Green Edge. Now, on The Green Edge, we write about the so-called green economy, and in particular, we try to look at it through the lens of the skills and the competences that people need to live and function within it and hopefully contribute effectively to it. And you can subscribe. You're welcome to subscribe to The Green Edge. We're on greenedge.substack.com. That's quite enough about me. Now, as part of that, as part of what we do, environmental, social, and governance cultures for firms, ESG, of all sizes, are firmly within our zone of interest. And as you may have read in the invite to this webinar, there's a very strong argument that in today's world, building an ESG-centric culture, it's not just a trend, it's actually a necessity for businesses of all sizes. Why is that so? Well, there's a carrot and there's a stick here. The stick is there's a growing expectation from stakeholders, whether they be investors, regulators, consumers, customers, for companies to be doing the right things in this space. But wherever you get your information from, whether it's from reports, whether it's from AI or whatever, you will hear there are potentially substantial benefits to ESG in terms of things like customer retention, brand loyalty, talent attraction, retention, risk management, resilience, operational efficiency, and ultimately this word sustainability, the sustainability of a company in its truest sense of the word, that is in the so-called triple bottom line of people, planet, and profit. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. The panelists who you see on the screen around me or opposite me, wherever I am within your Zoom screen, the panelists are all very active in the ESG space from their different viewpoints. And on this webinar, we'll be discussing the importance of an ESG-centric culture. We'll consider some of the best practices. And in particular, we're going to be looking at the role of training. And we hope in this webinar to be offering a few insights into ESG training for staff using the Kineo ESG training suite as our baseline and as our example. With that, let me just turn over to the panelists and give them just a few seconds to introduce themselves. Our panelists are Emma Weaver of BITC, Raquel Noboa of 50 Shades Greener, Stuart Perry of Trio ESG, and Layla Kroll, who is with Kineo herself. Let's start with you, Emma. Can we just have a quick introduction from you?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Emma Weaver. I'm a climate action manager at BITC, and I lead on green skills, so I'd largely speak about that today. So Business in the Community is the UK's largest responsible business network dedicated to building a fairer and greener world. And we've been supported by the King Charles for over 40 years.
Thank you, Emma. Raquel?
Hi, everyone. My name is Raquel Novo. I'm the founder and CEO of 50 Shades Greener, and we're an international organization that provides training, consultancy, and certifications to businesses and governments around the world.
Thank you, Raquel. Stuart.
Hi everyone, pleasure to be here. I'm Stuart Perry, founder and managing director of Kineo ESG. We're a boutique sustainability consultancy working with businesses and investors to help them navigate sustainability and ESG strategies, compliance and communications.
Thank you. And last but not least, where are you on my screen? Layla, over there. Layla.
Hi, I'm Layla Kroll. I'm the product creative lead for Kineo courses. I have a background in creating bespoke courses for Kineo and sustainability, but now work for Kineo courses, and we've just, as Fraser says, rolled out our first, I think, 15 courses in our ESG online training suite. So I design the courses alongside subject matter experts.
And we'll be hearing a little more about that, about the Kineo ESG set during the course of the webinar, together with an offer to the panelists, and we'll talk about that at the end of this webinar. Just a reminder that we will be having a very short Q&A session at the end. We've only allocated about 5 or 7 minutes to it, so we won't be able to cover all the questions, but we will get back to you with any questions that we have. And please, any questions, put them in the webinar chat, and we'll deal with as many as we can. Probably, as I said, probably only 2 or 3 at the end of the webinar. So let's make a start. Let's talk about ESG-centric cultures in general. What actually is it? Raquel, can we start with you? Can you explain to us what is an ESG-centric culture? What is that when it's at home, and why is it important?
I'll do my best on this one. So an ESG-centric culture happens when we integrate sustainability principles at the forefront of our business operations. And to me, like you very well explained in the introduction, it all goes back to those 3 Ps: people, planet, and profit. And it's, funny because sometimes within business, we feel that, profit doesn't have a place in sustainability, but it is pretty much part of sustainability. And I always like to think of or place those 3 Ps in that order of importance, putting people first. We need to put people first, because if we look after people, we stand a better chance that they will look after the planet, and in turn that will look after our profit. And I like to think of ESG, I guess, as aligning an organization to the Sustainable Development Goals, which are the framework for that very desired world of sustainable development. So when I work with the Sustainable Development Goals, what I like to do is divide them into 2 separate buckets. Some SDGs relate to environmental justice, and other SDGs relate to social justice. Unfortunately, and because the imminent threat of climate change, governments and businesses alike are putting a lot more emphasis in our environmental goals than our social goals. But true sustainable development requires that, I guess, we change the way we live, the way we work, and the way that we act. And such a monumental change requires for every individual to change their current behavior. And if we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs for behavioral change, humans are only going to be able to realize their full potential when their basic needs are fulfilled. Therefore, in my opinion, environmental justice will never be achieved unless we strive to achieve social justice. And that's the S on ESG. And after all, sustainability is all about people. It's us people that have created the world that we live in, but it's also us people that have the power to change that world. And when it comes to a business, of course, we can leverage technology to reduce our environmental impact, but a true culture of sustainability starts only when everyone in the organization, including all stakeholders, understand the role they have to play in its sustainability journey, and also feel empowered to make the changes that they need to make. Why is it important? You alluded to most of the important factors in your introduction as well. But to me, first of all, it's an ethical decision. And apart from that, then we can look at things like legislation. The CSRD is now here to stay. And while it's only asking large companies to report for now, it is also going to affect small, medium-sized companies within the next 2 years. There is customer demand, or customer values are changing, and we need to align our business operations to those new values of the new generations that have become our clients now. The finance sector is also pushing the ESG agenda. Investors are now asking for ESG reports before they invest in companies. One of our clients 6 months ago signed his best refinancing deal that he ever received in his chain of hotels, because he was able to demonstrate that they had an ESG policy and a strategy that included the measurement of many, many social and environmental metrics. Another important thing to note is that a properly implemented ESG strategy can save your business a lot of money. And this is perhaps contrary to perceptions. You know, sustainability involves finding ways to run our operations more efficiently, which can generate huge cost savings from a business perspective, but also it can assist with staff retention, customer loyalty, and staff productivity. So sustainability is not the nice thing to do anymore. It's actually the smart thing to do from a business point of view.
Okay, thank you. And yes, you're right. I mean, that's something we've certainly found in writing the Green Edge, that this focus on those 3 Ps, it's a bit jargonistic, but it's such an important thing that, yes, companies have to make profit, but they can do that through their people, through the culture, and with an environmental mindset as well. Stuart, you work with companies of all sizes, don't you, within Trio ESG? What do you find are the key components for, you know, companies of all sizes for building that kind of ESG-centric culture within their organizations?
Yeah, thanks, Fraser. Well, there's a few things that I'm going to outline here. The important part in the context of this is just really making sure that you sit back and tailor it to your organization. This is a complex ESG sustainability, the challenges the world faces. It is really complex, and no business, small, medium, or large, can be expected to kind of figure everything out on their own. So a really clear understanding of your business activities, the context you're operating in, including your industry, region, potential significant impacts, positive and negative. That's a really important starting point. I've worked with businesses and clients in the past where it's very easy just to get caught up in what's the thing of today, which means you end up just jumping from one thing to another without any real sort of authenticity or strategy to really make a difference on the things that actually that matter, which can lead to inefficiencies, resources being deployed on stuff that actually isn't going to move the dial. So that point there is understanding, sitting down and having a real clear understanding of your context in terms of how the business interacts with the wider world, people, environment, and the economy. The impacts of your business and what you do through your whole value chain. So the suppliers you work with in your day-to-day operations, your management of your people, resources, and your interaction with customers and the products you produce right through the value chain. That's a really important starting point, and is the first thing I always say to my clients is step back and let's look at that before we do anything else. The second point I wanted to make, and speaking for people who are at the beginning of this journey, is leadership buy-in. Having some form of leadership buy-in, whether that's the CEO or managing director of a company, the board, whoever it may be, there has to be leadership buy-in for this. Otherwise, if you're someone in the business trying to move this forward and you don't have that sort of sponsor leadership buy-in, you're going to find it really difficult to make the case. So as much as there's always space, and I very much advocate for a bottom-up approach, you need that element of top-down leadership engagement to really move this forward. And if set in the context of what I've just described before, of understanding how ESG and sustainability relates to the business and the opportunities that presents, that makes life much easier. And then following on quickly from the leadership buy-in, the third point I wanted to make was around having a really clear sense of direction and strategy that's commensurate with your business, your industry, the region you operate in, and your potential impacts. Going back to a previous point, again, it's very easy for businesses to kind of just get caught up in all the demands that are out there, and you get pulled off and left left, right, and centre, in lots of different directions. Actually sitting down, understanding everything I just said, having that leadership buy-in, then creating a strategy that really hits a sweet spot of your business interests, the environmental needs, societal needs, and the needs of the economy is a sort of four-pronged Venn diagram, and that sweet spot in the middle. Those are the big areas then you know and can be confident that's where we're going to make the greatest impact, whether it's positive or minimizing the negative impacts that we potentially have on society and the environment. That's not to say that you don't do anything else, but then you have a real sort of picture and a clear strategy of, we know we're focusing on these areas and we really understand the reasons why. So therefore, when the demands come in from other places, it might be that's fine. We can maybe do a bit of that, but still these are our priorities over here. We're not going to keep switching back and forth and moving all over the place, just trying to keep up with the external environment, which is pretty much impossible to do if that's your approach.
Right. And sustainability, in my experience, is full of Venn diagrams. There are Venn diagrams, but it sits at the intersection of so many things, doesn't it? And it drives so many things. Now, you mentioned leadership commitment. Let me go over to Emma. Emma, business in the community, I read, is the UK's largest responsible business network. So you see a lot of organisations within your membership. And Stuart's already mentioned the importance of leadership commitment to all of this, and I'm sure you would agree with that. But you must see lots and lots of examples of good practice and probably bad practice as well. But let's focus on the good or even best practices. What kind of things are you seeing around the membership that sort of point you in the direction of good practice?
Yeah, I can touch on a few examples. And, building on what Stuart just said, the power of leadership buy-in, it cannot be underestimated with, large decision-making powers found here. BITC has been working in the green skills space since COP26 and the publication of the 7 Steps for Climate Action. And across our work, whether the development of the Building Green Skills Route Map, the recently developed kind of Green Skills Lab, which is a program, or the partnership event that we had with OVO in May, there's been an awareness in all of these settings for the role of leadership in driving the culture to adopt ESG. So a couple of examples from across our multi-sector membership of how organizations have led by example. All of the businesses involved in the Green Skills Lab have at least one C-suite championing the agenda. And as a result, they are the front-running businesses, providing best practice tools and resources to the wider business community. And other insights that I've kind of pulled for this webinar is that, senior leaders have a responsibility to champion squiggly careers. And as many people don't feel like they have the, ability to change. And obviously, this is really important with sustainability kind of roles being quite new to the space. So I think that's one point. Another is that senior leaders kind of need to look at inclusive learning cultures to ensure that everyone is kind of brought along on this kind of just transition. And, no one left behind is a key principle in just transition kind of narrative. And then also they need to kind of uphold the agenda itself across the organization, ensure that it's being kind of represented at board level, but then also kind of encouraging practitioners to be leaders in their own right. Practitioners really do see the barriers to ESG front and center in those delivery roles. So it's almost kind of promoting them to feed into kind of top level ESG kind of strategies. But I'll pause there.
Okay, all right. Let's go back to Stuart. You mentioned there, actually, Emma, just before I move on from you mentioned the C-suite, and the big organizations, they have the C-suite. They have the chief executive for sustainability, but the smaller businesses don't have that. They have to build sustainability into their organizations alongside business as usual, and they don't have somebody with that kind of helicopter view, do they? So and this is a real challenge we have on the Green Edge, and that is, how can the smaller businesses get involved with this? So can I just go back to Stuart again? Stuart, you look at businesses, no doubt, of many different sizes. How do you find that different companies can tailor their strategies to fit their unique business? And this is something you mentioned earlier on. You're muted, Stuart. Just unmute yourself there.
Apologies, classic. Okay. So yeah, the tailoring, this kind of follows on quite well from the point I was making around understanding your context and your impacts and where you could really make the biggest difference. Starting, I mean, at one point, really understanding why you're doing this in terms of the business drivers of this as well. It may be that if you're particularly in a small or medium organization, it may be something that is just part of the values and mission of the business. So that's really integral and core to your why. You want that to be just part and parcel of how you do businesses. But there's a whole host of reasons that companies, big and small, might be embarking on this agenda. And all of those reasons are relevant as we see all the changes that are happening with regulation, customer demands, investor demands, etc. It may be that it's a compliance exercise. As Raquel mentioned, there is much more in the way of regulation, which mainly affects the bigger companies and investors at the moment, but that trickles down. If you're in the supply chains of those companies, for example, you're going to be engaged on these issues and expected to come up with something to respond. So there may be a really compliance-driven element of it. It may be more opportunity-based. So you see this as a business development opportunity, or it's something that you understand that customers are really engaged with at a kind of really abstract level, and everywhere between. So really understanding your why, and that will be unique to the organization. The next step in terms of I would take in terms of tailoring then and developing a strategy, which again links to what I was saying previously, is really conducting what we call a materiality assessment, which I'm going to assume that people do not know what this is, but apologies if you do. But conducting a materiality assessment really helps you identify what your stakeholders are interested in. So your customers, engaging with customers, suppliers, your employees, etc. What matters most to them. But on the other side, really understanding your impacts on the world as well, positive and negative. And that really helps you to tailor and focus on the issues that are going to matter most, and where you can have make a significant difference, as I've said previously. So that's a really, really important step in the process. It sounds really jargony, and you kind of think about, oh, why would we want to do that? We just want to get on with it. But if you do that step and do it well, it just sets the foundations for your strategy moving forward, and gives you really clear direction and confidence that you're focusing on areas that are going to matter most to your stakeholders and where you can make the biggest difference.
Yeah. Raquel, I think you'd probably agree with that. I mean, you deal with the hospitality industry as well as other industries, don't you? You're also on mute. You're not now. Well done. Yeah. I mean, what's your experience?
Yeah, we've worked with the hospitality industry as one of our primary sectors, but now through our ESG, we're also working with all types of industries. But yeah, very, very similar advice. For me, it all starts with measuring our environmental and social impact so that we can identify the unique priorities of the business, because there isn't one size fits all in ESG. And that's what is called the materiality assessment, which is a complete mouthful. Sometimes I feel that the language we use in sustainability becomes a barrier, because I hear materiality assessment, it doesn't make any sense. If you hear identify your priorities, everybody can understand that. But yeah, identifying those priorities, then you can have a very clear vision and goals, and then work backwards from your end goals and develop that action plan that will be implemented over time by your team, I guess. So yeah, very, very, very similar to what Stuart said.
But a question to both of you, Stuart and Raquel, and you can give me a quick one on this. The benefits are definitely there, aren't there? There are benefits to be had from doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we ourselves at 50 Shades Kineo have implemented always an ESG policy and a strategy ourselves. We do things like offering for the working week flexibility for our employees, looking after their mental and physical well-being with yoga, meditation, therapy sessions when they need them. And this might all sound very alien to some business owners, and it comes with these challenges. Last year we spent 17% of our profit on our employee well-being and upskilling, and that could seem like quite a lot, but I can say the returns are tenfold. We're an employer of choice. very easy for us to recruit good talent. We're retaining good talent. Our team are very efficient because they have a proper work-life balance, and it shows in our revenue. Our revenue has grown by 200% every year in the last 3 years because I firmly believe it's because we adopted these policies. So the benefits are there, but the time and the effort need to be put in, and difficult decisions need to be made as business owners sometimes, you know, to implement certain policies that might not come to us naturally because we grew up in a different world and from a different generation. But really, like you need to move on with your new employee values and the new customer values. So to me it's a smart business decision. As I said earlier, it's not. I don't think we have a choice in the future.
Yeah, and we here and we talk to companies that tell us things like, well, for the younger generation in particular, they're actually almost interviewing us when they're coming for a job to make sure that we're ticking the right sort of boxes. Stuart, you see that with some of your clients, I'm sure.
Yeah, I just echo everything there, and particularly from I think from a cultural point of view of the organisation and attracting and keeping good people in the business. That is one of the when you're in a business, and I've been in-house and working with clients, the engagement you see from your people in this is amazing, and that's actually something that then should be embraced as part of your communications and engagement internally as well. It's a brilliant exercise. And if you're one person in business right now thinking, oh, this is all on my plate, once you start to get to grips with this and take some of the steps we've discussed, you'll actually find you'll have a lot of people willing to get involved in this, whether it's on the side of their jobs or whatever. That there is such enthusiasm in business, and these steps can help you unlock that.
Really, and we talk to a lot of people that are in that position. Emma, give us one or two examples. I mean, you see a lot of organizations that are implementing, and you're helping them to integrate ESG. What are some specific examples you might be able to give us?
I mean, from a green skills perspective, we do see this as a kind of silver thread that sits across the whole ESG agenda. So obviously social value created through kind of enhanced employment opportunities to ensuring that there's someone representing. I know that some people don't get a chief sustainability officer, but perhaps sometimes the chief financial officer or just financial kind of departments, kind of the responsibility lies there. So our pilot Green Skills Lab, this is a kind of intervention that we've been rolling out. And it's a process to explore how the risks and opportunities that businesses have identified for themselves will impact the future workforce. And this is with specific kind of attention paid to those who are most kind of vulnerable in the transition. So we are a kind of multi-sector organisation, and we have the challenge of designing a programme that is relevant to everyone. And I think we have been able to do this, which is based on ESG principles. So businesses worked in a community of practice. So obviously with kind of peer-to-peer learning and collaboration, two really important kind of elements, I think, within the ESG kind of space. But they did progress their own projects specific to their operations and challenges. So a couple of examples, Fraser, is that, a property management company, they were ensuring that individuals in the communities where they kind of manage property had access to green opportunities. And they were kind of, undertaking lots of different kind of stakeholder interviews and things like that to kind of make that possible. And then another organization, they were looking at innovating their transport kind of maintenance processes in line with electric vehicle kind of advancements. So kind of building again on kind of what Stuart was saying, kind of tailored approaches. ESG, it depends on your operations and your challenges and things like that. So I think, the tailored approach. The program also kind of worked, it brought lots of different kind of topics into kind of discussion. So things like tackling existing inequalities in the workplace, so they're not perpetuated and replicated in future kind of societal kind of transformations. Then looking at platforms that already exist, so things like local skills improvement plans. And then, of course, the role of leadership, which we just touched on. So hopefully that adds a little bit more weight to what the Green Skills Lab is and kind of the specific projects that were kind of advanced, but
very
of course
much,
using
very much
collaboration.
so. Very much so. And I think you mentioned communities of practice there, and I think they're an important aspect. We ourselves, we're involved, myself and my colleague Michael Cross, we're involved in a community of practice around the food supply chain. And it's just sharing that experience and sharing those interests that a lot of people are working in vacuums within this field still relatively new, and getting people talking to each other is critical on webinars such as this. Let's move on to training and the importance of training. And of course, Kineo, ESG and their training suite. We'll talk a little bit about that later. But training is an important part of this. And again, there are developing best practices around that, starting with the skills frameworks. What kind of skills do people need? And then how do you best get people to acquire and onwardly develop those skills? So, Stuart, let's just come back to you. In terms of training programs, how involved are you in that with Trio ESG, and what are you seeing as some of the best practices around developing and delivering effective training in this space?
Yeah, we're involved in training at a more consultative level with boards and executive committees of larger companies. So that's a slightly different thing from then the kind of sort of helping and training employees in the business, which I've been less involved in, but supported some clients and just helping shape and find the right solutions. On that point and engaging sort of a wider employee workforce, one of the main things I would say is just ensuring that there is relevance to people's roles. There might be specific training for specific departments, or it might just be more generalist, raising awareness of what the business is trying to do and the challenges it's facing, but just ensuring that it's relevant and not condescending, right? There is always a danger that we can get a bit preachy in this world, and I try to avoid that at all costs. This shouldn't be a preachy thing. It should be collaborative. Those are the two key things I would say in terms of sort of upskilling and training the workforce from my point of view.
Okay. Raquel, what's your view on that?
Very similar as well. I'm laughing internally because I started every training program I put together with "This is not meant to preach," so I think it was very fitting. But I guess for me as an educator, it's very important that we understand that one size doesn't fit all when it comes to behavioral change, and so every training program needs to take into account not only the learning style of all learners, and there is many different learning styles, but also the different motivators to affect that behavioral change that is necessary. And motivators are different for different learners. But behavioral change is a very difficult thing to achieve. So the key really relies on finding those motivators and how we can do things differently. So it's important that programs explain the why are we doing this, but the most important thing is the how. How can me as an individual be part of the solution in a real life scenario? So, very action-based training is kind of for me where it's at when it comes, it's climate action, climate knowledge. It's really important to know the why, but really it's that action base that is most important, and we need to apply, practical action and action-based training. So, and again, as I mentioned before, the other big element for me is the language and how language can be a barrier at times, using these big grandiose words like scientific terms that nobody really understands, and you completely lose the attention of the learner. So for me, sustainability needs to be demystified and needs to understand by everyone. We need to make it as easy as the ABC and 1, 2, 3.
Well, just on that subject, what do you find is the most sort of obfuscating terms in the language? What do people get most confused over? This is off script. I'm just interested in what you're saying.
Like materiality assessments, scope 3 emissions,
net zero.
Net zero, yeah. People still confuse net zero with carbon neutrality. There is a lot of jargon and words, and sometimes greenwashing is hiding behind those, like carbon neutral. To me personally, and to many others in the field, it's greenwashing. But it's very difficult for the day-to-day person to identify these things. I only know this because I work in this arena every single day of my life. But to go into a sustainability, a simple awareness program, and start hearing these big words, I can see how it can put people off. And I myself, at the beginning of my sustainability journey, the first thing I tried to do was follow an ISO standard. And I felt so stupid. You know, straight away I felt I can't do this. I don't even understand what I'm meant to be doing, you know, and
Yeah.
you know, fast forward 15 years later, I'm now teaching people these things, but in a language that they can really understand and relate to, because that's important, that they can relate to what they're hearing and what they're learning.
Yes, absolutely. And just a perspective from mine, one of the terms that we find a lot of confusion around is this thing called circular economy. What exactly is circular economy? Well, it means don't throw this stuff out. Let's see if we can repair it first. Oh, I understand that now. So it's kind of bringing it really into focus. But yes, I agree with what you and Stuart are saying. You know, the terminology can be a challenge. And it's one and a barrier that needs to be overcome. But let's go back to Emma. I mean, you know, alongside that, what other challenges are you seeing among your membership when, you know, for your membership is trying to educate its workforce about the principles, and how do they actually then overcome those challenges? What do they do?
So a challenge we always hear from our membership, knowing that we've got multi-sector and varying maturity within climate action, is that in a difficult macroeconomic setting where budgets are being stretched, climate change just isn't the only show in town, and that resources and priorities are directed elsewhere as a result. We also hear that there needs to be a business case for climate action in order to kind of progress it. But we know that the current and future costs of climate impacts outweigh the cost of acting. And this is supported, I think it was by The Guardian a couple of months ago. I think they mentioned that economic damage from climate change is 6 times worse than thought. And with a 1 degree Celsius increase in global temperature, it leads to a 12% decline in global GDP. So I think the business case is pretty clear, and we do try to outline this quite a lot. So we do think that there needs to be kind of greater understanding for both mitigation and adaptation. We think there's quite a, heavy reliance on the carbon when obviously nature very much comes into this.
Yeah.
And we just know that this is becoming a part of the business's license to operate. I think, as everyone said, investors are looking for ESG, partnering businesses and kind of prospective employees. So in simple terms, I think it's in business interest.
Yeah, there's very much, as I said at the beginning, very, very much a carrot and a stick there, isn't there? Let's move on to the specifics of ESG training. And this webinar is sponsored by Sydney Gills Foundation and Kineo. And Kineo has an off-the-shelf suite of ESG courses. I think the count is 14 or 15 and counting. I'll bring Leila from Kineo in here. And just ask you, Leila, from your point of view, how Kineo's obviously looking at this, looking at the market, seeing how things are evolving. How have the needs for ESG training evolved? And what do you see that everything shaping the future? Where's it going?
Well, yeah, whereas before, I think organizations might have had some kind of sustainability strategy, completely not linked to compliance strategy. Now there's increasing regulatory and auditing and reporting requirements. This is something that people can't ignore. So I think in terms of the training, this is now, people know that it's important. We've talked about a lot of different people so far, leaders, CFOs, tiny organizations where one person's got to take on that role of net zero, and so there's a need for sort of rapid upskilling. If you think about a huge organization, fine, the leadership might be completely invested in this and they might have set the strategy and they might have embarked upon some of this training, but actually you've got to get absolutely everybody involved in this. Otherwise, as Raquel says, it's the people. And it's absolutely everybody involved that needs to make this happen and to actually put that strategy in action. So yeah, that's kind of where we're coming from, where we're hoping to kind of fill that gap. So we use technology and design to do both of these things. And if you think about all those people involved, that's a lot of people across a big organization. You might have hundreds, thousands of people. That's a lot of time. It's a lot of thinking. It's a lot of training. It's a lot of mindset change. So yeah, we try to link in our design to the UN SDGs, obviously that Raquel's already talked about, to the global reporting standards, to make it really relevant to absolutely everybody within the organization, you know, not just the net zero manager or whoever it might be. So we're writing for absolutely everybody in the organization, no matter who you are, your level of education, your level in the organization. And that's where we sort of think it's going. So that might be top down, but we're kind of thinking bottom up with our training, really. You know, we want to do culture change. So as we were saying, we try and be really specific. So it's not just, you know, you might have heard about this, the company wants to go to net zero, but what does that actually mean for me? So we like to, you know, grab attention with positive statistics and make sure we give examples, some of which have already been mentioned, like how can you look at your whole supply chain? There's loads of people within the organization who could do that as soon as they finish the training. How can you make sure that you recognize unconscious bias so that it doesn't you know, infiltrate your recruitment process? Loads of people are involved in recruitment interviewing, so yeah, we try and keep it specific. And yeah, people need rapid upskilling across the whole organization, and some of that is relevant for absolutely everybody. And there are organizations who might not be able to go into that kind of detailed face-to-face training as quickly as they need to. So yeah.
So do you find there's a pyramid of training there, Leila, where, as you said, there are the baseline that everybody should have, and then do you find there are special areas that you need to branch into, or different people need to branch into?
Yeah, I think it's more about time. I think it's not as simple as one pyramid. It is. I know exactly what you're saying. It is the leadership need to know one thing, but actually everybody needs to know what everybody else is thinking in the organization as well. So it's more about, yeah, that base level just covers, it's more hearts and minds than it is about just a base skill. It's kind of, you know, you can try and do as much as you can as an individual, install the panels on your house, whatever, but actually letting employees know that the impact they could have in an organization could actually be pretty huge. You know, businesses are having a massive impact. You know, you can reduce the carbon footprint of an organization that has a bigger impact than as well as doing it individually. So yeah, I do, but I don't think it's that simple. I think it's the leaders probably need to do the basics as well and keep reminding themselves of it.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, let's come to the end of this this chatty part of the webinar, and I'm going to throw this open to all of you here. And I'm going to ask you to be really concise about this. So there's the challenge. And thank you, you have been concise in your answer so far. But what would be the one piece of advice you might have for organizations at the beginning of their ESG journey? Who shall we start with? I can see Raquel's unmuted herself. So let's start with you, Raquel. What's your one piece of advice?
I keep it very simple. Get it started, make it a priority, and find the right sustainability partner to make sure that you can follow the right strategy and upskill your entire organization.
Beautiful. Thank you. Stuart.
I would echo that, and I would focus everything on authenticity, which backs up my points earlier of finding what your priorities are, but also don't try and do something that you're not doing or aren't capable of doing. Authenticity is so key to this. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up for trouble.
So stay within your business remit. Do what you're doing within your business, and bring the sustainability alongside that. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Emma.
So explore the just transition concept, I think, would be a kind of tip. As you know, this concept is just a convergence of climate and social challenges. So it is kind of ESG in a nutshell. Not to shamelessly plug, but BITC's 7 steps for climate action. This is a business framework on designing and delivering just transition. So something to look at perhaps after the webinar.
Okay. All right. And Leila.
Bring your people along for the ride, I'd say. You know, we've got a really short course called Becoming a Green Business. If everybody in your organization just started somewhere like that, and understood why you're doing what you're doing and how they can be a part of it, I think that's really important.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. All right. We now have a short Q&A session, so I'm going to bring Natasha in at this stage. I think, Natasha, you're managing the Q&A, or perhaps Mike. So I'm just doing a time check. We like to keep the time here. We're at 11:47, so we have about 7 minutes, something like that, for Q&A. How's that looking? And I think you've had 1 or 2 submitted before the seminar, haven't you?
Yes. Exactly. So at the moment we have 3 questions, and I think the first one from the audience was, how do you scale ESG culture for micro SMEs?
Micro SMEs, that's a good one. And the Green Edge is a micro SME, so I'll ask it on behalf of myself as well. Who wants to take that one? Raquel?
I don't mind. I mean, micro or macro, everybody's got to face the same challenge. And the biggest challenge in business right now to adopt ESG is being time poor. We are a time poor society in general. And then there is obviously immediate issues that come your way, that may seem more important because they're immediate, they're in front of you. So for a micro entity, I would consider my company a micro entity. We're only 8 employees, even though we work internationally online. But we're all involved in the ESG. We're all the ESG team, from me, the CEO, down to the admin person. Everybody has an action plan and a role to play in our strategy. So for a micro enterprise, just make it a team effort, an entire team effort. It's actually easier to make changes in a micro enterprise than a big one. So,
oh, that's an interesting comment, right? I'll take you up on that. Stuart, your view. Would you echo that?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo that. And with a smaller organization, you do have less the bureaucracy that larger organizations have to go through, and can move a bit quicker. So yeah, making it a real team effort. Raquel summed up perfectly. Making it a real team effort, build it into our objectives and incentives, etc. That's a really good way of doing it, so that people can really feel part of it.
Emma, how many micro businesses do you have within the membership at BITC?
To be completely honest, not that much, but obviously we do have quite a lot of FTSE 100s, and small businesses make up a lot of their supply chain, so it's still a priority at BITC. It's not something that we neglect, but completely here, the points made around being time poor. So partnering wherever you can, also collaborating, and in a pre-competitive stage or space, I think as an SME is really important. I think there's a phrasing, I'm always quite terrible about them, but many hands make little work, or something like that. So just kind of, partnering and collaboration, I think, is really important for SME.
Yeah. And Leila, the nature of the modularized training you're producing is ideal for that, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that time poor nature is exactly, we're designing around that basically. And, we know that the people stay on our learning platform for an average of about 10 minutes. So we know we've got 10 minutes. That's why we grab their attention with these kind of positive statistics and things like that. And when I said technology before, the other thing that we do to address that is we have these courses that kind of upskill you, that you can do year on year, but you can take a pre-assessment the next time you take it, so that you can eliminate topics that you already know. And we're confident we've tested you, you've understood it. So yeah, there are ways that you can help. Technology can help, and short bursts of learning in between meetings, whatever, is kind of where we're coming from.
Yeah, indeed. Natasha, next question.
Yes, we have a question from Derek, who says, who's asking, what is the audience's views on how nuclear power fits with the ESG-centric culture?
Nuclear power. Any of you guys working with nuclear power?
It's a very loaded question.
And actually, Derek has just followed that up. He says, my nuclear power question relates to the sectors and projects companies work in, rather than the company itself. So yeah, good point there, Derek. It's the types of projects and how ESG built into those.
Not sure if I'm understanding correctly. I mean, it's what's the space of nuclear power, I guess, within that renewable energy sector? Is that more or less our personal view on it? I don't know enough about nuclear power to have either a positive or negative opinion about it. What I would say is it is a good source of energy because it can produce a lot more energy than what we can currently produce with wind and solar. However, a proper risk assessment would have to be done of the severity of the risk is something if there is contamination from nuclear power into the environment. So it's the severity and the probability. And I would imagine when you put those into a risk assessment, you're going to come out with the solution. The nuclear power is not the solution because the risk is too great. But like I said,
I think in fairness, Derek, is not about the ethics of nuclear. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Derek. It's not about the ethics of nuclear power within the current day, but it's how the project's being managed and risk management. Certainly, I spent most of my life as a project manager in some form or other, and risk management is key within a project. Derek just followed that up. It was a loaded question. Thank you, Derek. He said, as a previous company I worked for is divesting the nuclear power division to meet shareholder ESG expectations. So I think we'll all agree that's a task. It's going
on the divestment point. That's a really interesting one. I work with financial institutions and investors, and that debate is one that continues to roll on. And working with industries like nuclear, oil and gas, etc. Should you be in and trying to work to change them, reduce the risks, or make them transition, or help them transition, or should you be divesting? There's pros and cons for and against it. If you divest, you're just passing it on to someone else. You don't nullify the issue. If you're engaged, you might get nowhere, or you might make a difference. It's a really tricky one.
It really is. It really is. Perhaps the subject of a webinar in its own right. Perhaps one for later in this series, Natasha.
A good few webinars, I would suggest.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Derek. You got us wriggling on that one. Natasha, well, I think we have time for one more quick one.
Yeah, and I think the panel has kind of already touched on this in many different ways, but there's a question around what do the panel see as the top 3 topics of importance in terms of ESG education right now?
Okay, I'm going to ask for perhaps one from each of you. Who shall we start with? Stuart, got one?
If I think about my clients, the people I work with, and what we're engaged on most is really understanding what net zero is in the climate transition, because it's talked about everywhere. But actually, to Raquel's point earlier, really helping people understand what this is and the actions they can take, not just saying why we're doing it. With all the jargon that goes around it, is critical if we're going to help the global transition to net zero.
I think that's right. And overcoming the thought that a lot of people have is that net zero is just there to cost them money. Raquel?
Exactly.
I think if I have to highlight 3 points that are necessary, the first is to be able to measure your environmental and your social impact. And that's something that every single individual in the world should be able to do. Because, through education and training, because what gets measured gets managed. If you don't measure, if you don't understand what your current impact is, how are you ever going to improve it? After we measure, then it's obviously being able to identify or develop an action plan to identify the things we can do to improve that measurement. And then the third is continue monitoring and reporting. So you measure all the time to see if your action plan is working or not. So to me, the 3 key principles that every sustainability program should teach.
Okay, and very quickly from you, Emma?
I'd say the role of nature. I think net zero is kind of a widely known topic. I'd like to assume perhaps, but nature I think is kind of left out. So thinking about the role of kind of business resilience, and I think nature obviously it sits across kind of communities as well. So I think ESG it kind of ties in.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. For those of you who may have asked questions and haven't had them answered, please, Natasha, I think I'm right in saying we will try and get back to you and get some views on that. All right. We have about 4 minutes left, and we're trying to keep to a good timing here. So what I'd like to do first of all is just thank the panelists, Raquel, Stuart, Leila, Emma, and Natasha also for and Mike in the background who is our techie guy. I haven't seen his face, but he's been there working with, and Celine also. So thank you very much for that. It's down to me to put some keynotes together, or key remarks, just to finish up. And all I can do here is read out some of the key things I've written down as we've gone through. I mentioned people, planet, profit at the very beginning, and Raquel backed that up and actually put them, I think, in that order, didn't you? People, planet, and profit in that order. And I think that's what sustainability is all about, and that's what ESG is all about. It's about putting the culture in place that drives towards that triple bottom line. We talked about the role of leadership, and you can apply this to many, many things, not just sustainability in ESG. If you don't have a leadership or somebody within the management team or directorship team to lead this, it ain't going to happen. You can have plenty of people driving from downstairs, but if it's not supported at the top, it isn't going to happen, particularly for the larger companies, I think. There's no one size fits all. There are different sizes of organizations. Stuart was very keen to point out, stick to your guns, stick to your knitting. It's about authenticity. It's about doing what you've always been doing, but bringing sustainability into this and bringing ESG principles into the way your business manages. It's about the culture of an organization, and that's the most difficult thing of any to change, certainly in my experience. You can change the structure. Look at the NHS. It's changed structure so many times. I'm not going to be critical of the NHS, but until a culture is changed of an organization, then you can change the structure as much as you like. And again, it's going to be suboptimal. It's about hearts and minds, and that's linked into culture. And from the Green Edge point of view, one of our themes for this year is writing about hearts and minds. And the way people approach and the way they think about sustainability and all its aspects, be it net zero, be it circular economy, be it whatever. Find the right partner, and we have people on this call who may well be the right partners for you. So contact people like Emma at BITC, like Raquel at 50 Shades Greener, like Stuart Perry at ESG, Trio ESG, and for training for Kineo for ESG training. And Emma's point about the just transition, you've got to take everybody along with you. That's it, except for me to mention one more thing, and that is there is an offer to all of the attendees. I've been monitoring the attendees. I've had one or two people drop off, but most of you have stayed for the full hour, and thank you very much for that. And please, Leila, Natasha, correct me if I'm wrong, but the offer to attendees is from Kineo, and it is for free trial access and 10 complimentary licenses for your organization for one of Kineo's ESG courses of your choice. And there are 14 or 15 being added to daily, I think. So there's quite a menu there to choose from. And this offer is valid for 3 months. If you're interested, drop a line through the chat or directly to Natasha or Leila, and that will get sorted out for you. And just from me, for whatever reason you've joined this webinar today, whether it's for your own education and awareness, whether it's for your own professional development, whether it's to understand what this might all means for your business, perhaps even for investment insights, or maybe just to pick up on some of the language, which can be confusing, as we've said. We hope it's proved useful. So with that, on behalf of Natasha Kalinga of Sydney Guilds Foundation, Celine Deng and Leila Kroll at Kineo, and myself and the panelists, I'm Fraser Harper from the Green Edge. Thank you for joining this webinar, and we hope to see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.